The sky was still dark as Maya Chen stepped outside her tiny dome. Three strange moons hung in the alien sky, casting weird shadows across the barren landscape. It was 3 a.m., and most of the human colony on Proxima b was still asleep. Not Maya. She had a 30-mile journey ahead of her, the same walk she made every single day. Maya checked her old backpack, making sure everything was secure. Her fingers brushed against the oxygen mask, essential for crossing the toxic lowlands. The air thinned out there, filled with particles that burned human lungs. She pulled her worn jacket tighter against the pre-dawn chill and began walking. What she didn't know was that someone was watching. Officer Cathor stood in the shadows, his compound eyes narrowed as he observed the small human female. For 3 months straight, this woman had made the same dangerous journey across terrain that most colonists avoided even in emergency vehicles. Today, he would discover why. Maya's boots crunched on the rocky soil as she left the safety of the colony behind. The settlement's lights grew dimmer with each step, until all that guided her was the eerie glow of the moons and her small flashlight. She knew the path by heart now. Every dangerous spot, every shortcut. Another day, she whispered to herself, pausing to catch her breath after climbing a steep hill. She pulled out a small photo from her pocket and stared at it for a moment. A little girl smiled back at her, Maya's daughter Lily, before the accident. Before everything changed. When Lily still ran and played and laughed without the need for the specialized medical equipment that now kept her alive. The research facility was 30 miles away from the main colony for safety reasons. When the colony was first established, transport shuttles ran every few hours. But as resources dwindled and priorities shifted, the shuttles became less frequent. 3 months ago, they stopped entirely. But Maya couldn't stop her work, so she walked. The morning sun began to rise, revealing the alien landscape in all its harsh beauty. Strange rock formations stretched toward the sky like fingers. Plants that looked more like crystals than vegetation glittered in the early light. Beautiful, but deadly. Many contained toxins that could kill a human with just a touch. Maya checked her watch. She was making good time today. If she kept up this pace, she would reach the research facility by midday. Behind her, at a safe distance, Officer Cathor followed silently. His camouflaged exoskeleton, a blend of natural biology and technology, allowed him to blend with the environment. As the colony's security officer, it was his job to investigate suspicious activity. And Maya Chen was definitely suspicious. Subject continues on the established path. He recorded quietly into his log. No deviation for 92 consecutive days. Maya stopped suddenly, causing Cathor to freeze in place. Had she spotted him? But no, she was looking at something on the ground. A small creature, one of the native species, was lying injured in the path. Most colonists would have walked past or even killed it. These creatures were known to be carriers of bacteria harmful to humans. Instead, Maya knelt down. From her backpack, she pulled out a small kit and gently treated the creature's wound with a clear gel. The creature made a chirping sound before scuttling away into the underbrush. Thor's antennae twitched in surprise. This behavior made no sense. Maya continued her journey, crossing dangerous terrain that most humans avoided. She navigated through a field of gas vents that could release toxic fumes without warning. She skirted the edge of a canyon where predatory flying creatures nested. All on foot. All alone. What Cathor didn't see, what no one knew, was what Maya carried in her backpack. Hidden beneath supplies and equipment was a small container, carefully insulated and secured. Inside were samples that represented humanity's last chance for survival on this hostile world. As the primary research facility came into view in the distance, Maya allowed herself a small smile. Another day, another journey completed. She quickened her pace, unaware that today would be different. Today, Officer Cathor would discover her secret, and everything would change. Officer Cathor kept his distance as Maya moved through the rocky terrain. His 6 legs made no sound on the loose stones, a skill perfected through years of security training. The colony administrators had ordered him to investigate after sensors detected unusual activity in restricted zones, exactly where this human female journeyed each day. Through specialized lenses, Cathor observed Maya's careful movements. She stopped near a cluster of blue-tinted rocks, her small human hands extracting something from the ground. A collector. A spy. None of the possibilities matched her official colony record. Maya Chen, xenobiologist, assigned to basic agricultural research. Behavior inconsistent with documented purpose. Cathor whispered into his recording device. Maya paused suddenly and looked around. Thor froze, his exoskeleton's camouflage adjusting to match the surrounding rocks. Had she sensed him? After a tense moment, she continued walking, but her pace quickened. The sun climbed higher as they approached the strangest part of Maya's daily journey. Ahead lay the abandoned mining zone, a place most colonists avoided due to the toxic spores that filled the air. Thor watched in disbelief as Maya adjusted her mask, checked a small device that blinked with green lights, and walked directly into the danger area. No human should survive that place for more than a few minutes. Yet Maya entered without hesitation. Thor hesitated at the boundary. His protective gear would shield him from the worst effects, but not indefinitely. Whatever this human was doing, it must be important enough to risk her life daily, or perhaps desperate enough. He followed her in. Inside the toxic zone, visibility dropped to mere feet. Purple mist swirled around them, clinging to every surface. Thor's sensors began registering dangerous levels of compounds. Then something unexpected happened. Maya stopped beside what appeared to be an injured crawler, one of the most dangerous native creatures on the planet. Most colonists shot these six-legged predators on sight. Yet Maya knelt beside it, removed something from her pack, and began treating its wounded limb. The crawler, instead of attacking, remained still. When Maya finished, it skittered away into the mist. Impossible, Thor muttered. Crawlers were aggressive toward all non-native species. This behavior defied everything known about these creatures. Maya continued deeper into the zone, navigating with surprising confidence. Thor realized she was following markers, small reflective tags placed on rocks, visible only when lit with a specific frequency light that she carried. She had been here many times before. As they walked, Thor's mind filled with memories of the first human arrivals 5 years ago. The tension, the misunderstandings, the accidents that had nearly sparked war between their species. Now the uneasy peace was maintained through strict separation. Humans stayed in their colony. Natives stayed in theirs. Contact was limited to official channels. Yet here was Maya, clearly breaking those rules. After 20 minutes of walking, they reached an opening in the rock face, the entrance to one of the abandoned cave systems. Maya looked around once more, then slipped inside. Thor approached cautiously. His scanners indicated extreme toxicity within the caves, levels that should be lethal to humans within minutes. Yet Maya had entered without additional protection beyond her simple mask. He waited, hidden, expecting her to emerge quickly. 10 minutes passed. 20. 30. Finally, Cathor made his decision. He activated his full protective measures and followed her into the cave. The tunnel descended steeply, the air growing thicker with spores. His equipment began flashing warnings. Yet ahead, he could see light. Artificial light. Human light. The tunnel opened into a larger cavern, and Cathor stopped in shock. The cave had been transformed into a makeshift laboratory. Primitive human equipment lined the walls. Sample containers filled shelves carved into the rock. And at the center, hunched over a glowing device, was Maya. But what truly froze Cathor in place was what lay beyond her. A small stasis pod, clearly taken from the colony's medical facility. Inside was a human child, unconscious but alive, connected to equipment that seemed to be integrated with the native spore systems. Maya hadn't noticed him yet. Thor's hand moved toward his weapon, but hesitated. This was more than simple rule-breaking. This was something else entirely. "Stop right there, human," he finally said, his translator converting his native clicks and whistles into human language. Maya turned, her eyes wide with fear, her body instinctively moving to stand between Cathor and the child in the pod. "Stop right there, human." Thor's translator crackled in the damp air of the cave. His mandibles clicked nervously as the toxic spores swirled around them. Maya froze, her hands carefully protecting the glowing samples she'd been examining. The blue light from her equipment cast strange shadows across her tired face. For a moment, neither moved. Native officer and human scientist, locked in a silent standoff. "Officer, I can explain," Maya finally said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She made no sudden movements, aware that Thor's species could react violently when startled. Thor's compound eyes took in the surprising scene before him. The cave walls were lined with makeshift shelving, holding thousands of labeled specimens. Primitive equipment, much of it clearly handmade from colony scraps, hummed and blinked throughout the space. Small growth chambers contained developing cultures that glowed with an eerie blue-green light. "You have stolen scientific materials from the colony," Thor stated, his translator giving his words a flat, mechanical tone. "You have entered restricted zones. You have violated the separation agreements." Maya shook her head slowly. "No, that's not what this is." She glanced toward the back of the cave, to the stasis pod that held her daughter. "I'm trying to save my child. And everyone else too." Thor moved forward, his protective gear making soft hissing sounds as he walked. His sensors were registering dangerous levels of toxicity, yet Maya stood before him with only a simple mask. She should be dead. Humans couldn't survive this environment. "Explain," he demanded. Maya gestured toward her equipment. "The colony's environmental systems are failing. The administrators know it, but they're hiding the truth. Our oxygen generators can't keep up with demand, and they're producing increasingly poor quality air. Within 6 months, the entire colony will suffocate." Thor remained silent. This information aligned with rumors he had heard among his own people. "I discovered something," Maya continued, moving slowly toward one of her sample containers. "These spores, the ones everyone fears, they can be modified to produce oxygen compatible with human biology. But the colony administration refused to investigate because of the risk." She opened the container, revealing a cluster of modified spores that pulsed with a gentle rhythm. "These are already producing oxygen. Clean oxygen." Thor's antennae twitched in surprise. His own people had studied these spores for generations, but had never discovered this potential. "Why do you travel here daily? Why not bring samples to your colony labs?" Maya's expression darkened. "Because the administration shut down my official research. They said it was too dangerous to experiment with native biology after the..." She paused. "After the incidents during first contact." She led Thor deeper into the cave, to where the small stasis pod hummed quietly. Inside lay a young human female, perhaps 7 years old by Thor's estimation. The child was unconscious, connected to both human medical equipment and what appeared to be a primitive version of the spore modification system. "This is my daughter, Lily." Maya's voice softened. "She was injured during an oxygen system failure 3 months ago. Her lungs were damaged. The colony hospital gave up on her, said she would never recover." Maya placed her hand on the pod's surface. "But I didn't give up." Thor studied the girl. His scanners indicated the modified spores were indeed producing oxygen directly into the child's breathing system, a crude but effective life support. "The colony administration declared my research illegal, cut off my access to equipment and transport," Maya continued. "So I walk here every day. I built this lab from scraps. And Lily is getting better." She pointed to readings on a small screen. "Her lung function has improved 12%. Thor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of internal conflict among his species. By all regulations, he should arrest this human and report her unauthorized laboratory. But his people had a deep cultural respect for parents who protected their young, regardless of species. His sensor suddenly beeped a warning. The toxicity levels were rising rapidly. "We must leave immediately," Kthor said, his translator unable to convey the urgency in his native speech. "Something has changed in the environment." Maya rushed to her equipment. "The readings are off the charts. This isn't natural." Her eyes widened with sudden understanding. "They found us. The colony must have tracked me here." A distant rumble confirmed her fears. The entrance tunnel glowed with approaching lights. "They're going to destroy everything," Maya whispered, looking desperately at her daughter's pod. The cave trembled as dust and small rocks rained from the ceiling. Maya rushed to secure her daughter's stasis pod, checking the connections and power supply with practiced movements. The rumbling grew louder, and Kthor's sensors flashed urgent warnings. "They're using sonic disruptors," Kthor said, recognizing the pattern of vibrations. "Standard protocol for eliminating contaminated zones." Maya looked up from her daughter's pod, her face pale in the blue emergency lights. "These spores," she explained quickly, "can be modified to produce oxygen compatible with both human and native biology. The formula is nearly complete." She pointed to her data tablets. 3 more days. That's all I need to perfect it." Kthor's compound eyes shifted between Maya and her equipment. "The colony administration knows this. They know parts of it. They refuse to investigate because of the risks." Maya's voice hardened. "But what choice did I have? The official reports say our oxygen systems are stable, but that's a lie. I've seen the real data. Within 6 months, oxygen levels will drop below sustainable levels." Another explosion shook the cave, closer this time. Small equipment tumbled from shelves. "We must leave now," Kthor insisted. "My transport can carry you and some essential equipment." Maya stood firmly beside her daughter's pod. "I can't move, Lily. The pod is integrated with the cave system now." She pointed to a network of tubes running from the modified spores into the rock walls. "This specific combination of minerals and spores is what's keeping her alive. If I disconnect her—" She didn't finish the sentence. Kthor's antennae twitched with indecision. By colonial law, he should arrest this human for unauthorized experimentation. But his people had their own laws too, older laws about the sanctity of life and knowledge. His communication device buzzed. "Officer Kthor, report your position." The voice belonged to Colony Administrator Vance, a human known for his strict enforcement of separation policies. Kthor silenced the device. "What exactly happens in 3 days?" he asked Maya. "The final culture will be mature enough to test. If it works, I can prove that these spores don't just produce oxygen. They clean it." Maya brought up a simulation on her screen. The modified spores could solve both our species' atmospheric compatibility issues. No more separation needed. No more failing systems. A more significant explosion rocked the cave. Cracks appeared in the walls. "They're getting closer," Maya whispered. "My daughter won't survive relocation. Please." Kthor made his decision. Against every regulation in the colonial charter, he activated his personal shield generator, technology that humans weren't supposed to know existed. The blue field expanded around them, covering Maya, her daughter, and the critical equipment. "This will hold against the sonic waves," he said. "But my people will know I've used restricted technology to aid a human. The consequences will be severe." Maya looked at him with newfound understanding. "You'll be outcast, like me." Kthor's mandibles clicked in what might have been the native equivalent of a grim smile. "Perhaps both our species have been too quick to judge each other." The shield hummed as the first direct hit struck. Outside their protected bubble, rocks and equipment shattered under the assault. Kthor's communication device buzzed again, more urgently. He answered it this time. "Officer Kthor, we've detected unauthorized technology activation in your sector. Explain immediately." Administrator Vance's voice was cold with suspicion. Kthor looked at Maya, who was checking her daughter's vital signs. Then he made a choice that would change everything. "Administrator, this is Kthor. I have discovered something you need to see. The human scientist has developed a solution to our atmospheric problems. Silence filled the channel. Then, "You've been compromised, officer. Stand down immediately. Extraction teams will remove all humans and unauthorized materials." "Sir, with respect, you don't understand the significance." "This is not a request, officer. The Human Colony Council has issued an ultimatum. All unauthorized research will be destroyed as a biohazard. The subject Chen has been deemed a threat to colonial security." Maya looked up at the mention of her name, her eyes wide with fear. Thor turned off his communication device and faced Maya. "We have 6 hours before they override my shield. Can you complete enough of your work in that time to prove your theory?" Maya glanced at her equipment, her daughter, then back to the alien officer who had just sacrificed everything to help her. "I'll need your help," she said. "But yes, I think we can." Outside the shield, the bombardment continued, but inside, human and alien began working together against time, against prejudice, against the very institutions that had divided them. 2 months had passed since the standoff in the cave. Maya stood nervously before the combined council of humans and natives, her hands clasped tightly to hide their trembling. The grand meeting hall had been specially designed with environmental controls allowing both species to breathe comfortably, a direct result of her research. No longer did she walk alone. Beside her stood Officer Cathor, his exoskeleton bearing the marks of demotion, but his posture proud. And most miraculously, Maya's daughter Lily stood with them, breathing freely for the first time since the accident. The council members stared at the trio with expressions ranging from admiration to lingering suspicion. At the center sat Administrator Vance, his face carefully neutral despite having fought against this meeting for weeks. "The Long Walk Initiative has been thoroughly tested and verified," announced Chief Scientist Patel, addressing the gathered representatives. "Thanks to Maya Chen's discovery, our oxygen crisis is over. The modified spores not only produce compatible oxygen for both species, but actually clean our shared atmosphere of toxins." Maya looked out at the crowd filling the hall. Through the large windows, she could see construction equipment busy at work. They were building a new transportation hub, directly on her old walking path. Future generations would never know how close their colony had come to extinction, or how a mother's determination to save her child had ended up saving them all. "Ms. Chen," Administrator Vance's voice cut through her thoughts, "the Council acknowledges that your unauthorized research has yielded unexpected benefits. However, the fact remains that you violated multiple colonial regulations, endangered the separation treaties, and stole equipment." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Maya lifted her chin, ready to accept whatever punishment they deemed necessary. "Dad, stop it." Lily's voice rang out clearly. The young girl stepped forward, her once pale face now healthy and flushed with indignation. "Mom saved my life when your doctors gave up. She saved everyone." Vance's stern expression faltered as he looked at his granddaughter. This revelation sent another wave of whispers through the audience. Few had known of the administrator's family connection to Maya, a relationship he had carefully hidden during the investigations. "The child speaks truth," came the translated voice of Elder Tizzle, the highest-ranking native present. "Both our peoples faced extinction. The human Maya Chen walked between our worlds to build a bridge none thought possible." The elder turned multifaceted eyes toward Cathor, and Officer Cathor showed courage in protecting knowledge over protocol. The elder rose, a rare gesture of respect. "My colony proposes a new agreement, one of collaboration rather than separation, beginning with a joint research facility open to both species." Silence fell over the chamber. Such a proposal would have been unthinkable just months ago. Administrator Vance looked at his daughter and granddaughter. Something in his rigid demeanor finally softened. "The human colony seconds this proposal," he said quietly, "and suggests Maya Chen lead the joint research team." Applause erupted from the human section of the audience. The natives responded with their own sign of approval, a rhythmic clicking that filled the hall. Later, as the formal proceedings ended, Thor approached Maya and Lily outside the council chambers. I have a question that has puzzled me since we met, he said, his translator conveying curiosity. Why did you walk so far every day? There were caves much closer to your colony with similar properties. Maya smiled, kneeling down to adjust Lily's breathing support, now just a small device rather than a full stasis pod. Only the most distant cave had exactly the right conditions of minerals and spore variants. When you're trying to save someone you love, no distance is too far. She looked out at the path where she had walked alone for so many months. Workers were installing the final sections of the new transport line that would connect the human colony, the research facility, and the native settlement. Sometimes, Maya said softly, the longest path is the only one that leads home. Thor's mandibles clicked in what Maya now recognized as a gesture of deep respect. My people have a saying. The path walked with purpose becomes a bridge for others. Together, the unlikely trio, human scientist, native officer, and the child who had brought them together, watched as the first transport pod traveled along the route once known only as Maya's Long Walk. What had begun as one mother's desperate journey had become a path forward for two civilizations.